Usually when we think about a recipe, we picture this highly rigid, like almost scientific formula.
Right, like a strict set of rules.
Exactly. You have a list of ingredients, precise measurements, a very strict set of instructions. It's
Hmm.
binary,
Yeah.
You follow the steps, you get the dish. You miss a step, and, well, you ruin dinner.
Yeah, it feels like a very closed system. And that's comforting in a way, because we like to believe that if we just follow the rules, the outcome is totally guaranteed.
But then you step into the world of traditional comfort foods, and suddenly that rigid formula just completely falls apart.
Oh, it shatters.
Right. We're looking at a culinary landscape that is constantly shifting underneath our feet. So today, we are taking a single Wikipedia article and exploring the hidden depths within it. We're going on a deep dive into a traditional Balkan dish called Mekitsa.
Or Mekitsi, if we're, using the plural.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because for you listening, whether you consider yourself a massive foodie or you just love a really good cultural exploration, this unassuming breakfast staple holds some genuinely surprising secrets about how we categorize the very things we eat.
It really does.
And we aren't just reading off a recipe for you to try at home. We are using this one incredibly beloved comfort food as a lens to explore regional history, linguistics, global culinary connections, and how human beings celebrate the biggest moments in their lives.
Yeah, it's so much more than just a quick breakfast.
Right. But before we can map out how this dish connects to the rest of the world, we need to understand its anatomy. Like, what actually is Mekitsa?
Well, at its most basic foundational level, Mekitsa is a traditional Bulgarian breakfast dish. It consists of a kneaded dough, critically featuring yogurt as a core component, which is then deep fried.
Okay, deep-fried yogurt dough. Sounds amazing.
Oh, it is. And the standard modern ingredient list is beautifully simple, honestly. It's just flour, eggs, yogurt, a leavening agent of some kind, water, salt, and oil for the frying.
So what really caught my eye in our source material wasn't just the ingredient list, it was the name itself. The etymology here is so revealing.
Oh, absolutely.
The name Mekitsa comes from the Slavic root word mek, which translates to soft, and then you add the Slavic feminine suffix. It's sada. So if you translate it literally, you are eating a dish called softness.
What's fascinating here is that literal translation. It speaks volumes about the emotional connection people have with this dish,
Yeah, I mean, eating softness.
Exactly. In many languages, feminine suffixes denote something nurturing or diminutive or deeply comforting. By embedding the very texture of the food, that pillowy, tender interior into the name itself, and feminizing it, they've established it linguistically as the ultimate comfort food.
I find that fascinating because we usually name our foods after their ingredients, right? Like beef stew, or after the region they come from, like champagne, or even after the person who invented them.
Right, like a sandwich.
Yes. But here you are literally eating a physical concept. It's like naming a dish crunch or, I don't know, warmth.
It's pure texture as identity.
And that conceptual identity is apparently so strong that it completely transcends borders, even as the specific naming conventions tweak slightly depending on where you are on the map.
Yeah, so in Serbia, for example, you'll find them called mekik, or mekika in the singular.
Okay?
And if you go down to North Macedonia, it's known as mekika or sometimes pituljica, but that core root, the promise of that comforting softness, remains the anchor across the entire region. The texture is its entire identity.
But the pursuit of that namesake softness is where things get really complicated in the kitchen, right?
Oh, heavily complicated.
Because this is such a fundamental everyday staple, the methods used to achieve that perfect texture kind of fracture along regional lines. You would assume everyone making the same dish wants it to be soft, so they must all make it exactly the same way.
You'd think so, yeah.
But geography dictates the recipe just as much as tradition does. Let's look at the preparation method. The process starts normally enough. You let the dough rise, you tear it into small balls, and you spread them to flat rounds before dropping them into hot oil.
Standard crying procedure?
Right. But there is a crucial, non-negotiable step mentioned in the sources. The shaping of the mekitsi must be done with wet hands, or hands coated in vegetable oil.
Which tells us everything we need to know about the hydration level of this dough.
It's super wet.
It is incredibly sticky. In baking, when a dough has a very high ratio of liquid to flour, it becomes basically impossible to handle with traditional methods.
Right, like imagine trying to roll out dough that is essentially the consistency of thick glue. If you use a wooden rolling pin and a dusting of flour, you're going to incorporate way too much dry flour, ruin the texture, and probably end up with half the dough just like stuck to your counter.
Exactly. The wet or oiled hands act as a barrier. They prevent the dough from sticking to the cook while maintaining that incredibly high moisture content. And you need that moisture because when that wet dough hits the boiling oil, the water rapidly turns to steam. That creates air pockets that guarantee the softness on the inside while the outside gets all crispy.
So it's a very tactile, hands-on cooking experience. It sounds like you are essentially trying to shape a fragile water balloon made of flour.
That is a perfect way to describe it. You really can't be precious about it.
But what really surprised me is how the leavening agents and the dairy completely change depending on what town you're standing in.
Oh, the regional rivalries are great.
Right. Like, if you're in Silistra, the recipe calls for yogurt and bread soda. But if you travel to a village near Stara Zagora, they swap the baking soda for yeast, but keep the yogurt.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is that we are looking at a snapshot of historical agriculture and chemistry.
How do you mean?
Well, if a village had a strong yogurt-making tradition, they had a constant supply of acidic dairy. Baking soda requires an acid to activate and create bubbles. So yogurt plus baking soda equals a fast, immediate rise.
That makes sense. But if you head to Ados, they throw a complete curveball. The sources say they use yeast, but they swap out the yogurt entirely and use milk instead.
Which suggests a completely different rhythm of daily life. Yeast takes time to ferment and rise, unlike the instant chemical reaction you get from baking soda.
Right.
And milk isn't acidic enough to activate baking soda anyway, so in Ados, they lean on a slower biological fermentation process to create those air pockets.
Okay, but the historical anomaly in the sources is what really stopped me in my tracks. Because wait a second, the defining characteristic of this dish is supposed to be the yogurt dough, right?
That's the modern standard, yes.
But the oldest known recipe for Mekitsa uses only yeast, flour, salt, sugar, and water. Water is the sole wet ingredient. There is no milk, and there is no yogurt at all.
Nothing, just water.
It's like finding out the original chocolate chip cookie didn't actually have chocolate in it. Let me theorize here for a second. Was yogurt just too difficult to keep from spoiling in certain eras before modern refrigeration, meaning they had to rely on just water?
That is a highly logical deduction, honestly. Early iterations of everyday peasant foods had to rely on the absolute bare minimum of ingredients that wouldn't spoil easily.
Because water and flour are shelf-stable.
Exactly. But the evolution to include yogurt later on wasn't just about taste or availability, it was fundamentally chemical.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the acidity in yogurt actively breaks down and tenderizes the gluten network in wheat. Gluten is what makes bread chewy.
And chewiness is the enemy of softness.
Precisely. If your goal is ultimate softness, you don't want a chewy dough. As dairy became more reliably stored or produced daily, cooks incorporated yogurt to literally engineer a softer dough. The lactic acid physically weakens the protein bonds.
Wow. So the recipe evolved to physically better match its own name.
It did.
The pursuit of softness actually drove the culinary innovation. That completely shatters the idea of traditional recipes being locked in stone. They adapt to the resources, the chemistry, and the tastes of the era while still clinging to their historical identity.
It's the absolute definition of a living, breathing cultural artifact.
And that evolution leads us perfectly into a realization that really zooms out our perspective. Because Mekitsa, even with all its regional chemistry quirks in Bulgaria and the surrounding areas, it doesn't exist in a vacuum.
No, not at all.
If we analyze the ingredients and the cooking methods, we can place this dish on a massive global family tree of breads and fried doughs. Let's start with Europe. The source material draws direct comparisons to two distinct dishes.
Right.
First, there's the Hungarian langos, which is another deep-fried flatbread from a neighboring European region. That's a straight line. But then it compares it to the British Yorkshire pudding.
Which sounds weird at first, but the mechanism of cooking is incredibly similar there. Yorkshire pudding isn't deep-fried in a vat, obviously. It's baked in a puddle of screaming hot beef fat or oil.
Oh, right.
But the batter relies on eggs, flour, and a high volume of liquid to create a rapid expansion of steam. The sensory goal is identical to Mekitsa. You want a crisp, structured exterior holding together an airy, soft, almost custardy interior.
But the connection that really blew my mind was the Indian subcontinent. The sources point out that Mekitsi share the exact same ingredient profile and essentially the exact same taste as non-flatbread.
The parallels there are undeniable. You have the flour, a leavening agent, And critically, the use of a fermented dairy-like yogurt to chemically tenderize the dough, exactly like we just talked about.
So what does this all mean? Because here is the crucial divergence. Naan is famously baked. It is slapped against the insanely hot inner wall of a traditional clay tandoor oven.
Right.
Mekitsa, with the exact same starting materials, is dropped into a vat of boiling oil. To me, it's like witnessing culinary parallel evolution. You give two entirely different cultures thousands of miles apart the exact same building blocks. But simply changing the heat source, a clay oven versus a vat of hot oil, creates two entirely different cultural staples.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the choice between baking and frying isn't just a matter of preference. It's often dictated by fuel and infrastructure. Building and maintaining an incredibly hot clay oven requires permanent space, specific materials, and a massive amount of consistent fuel.
Whereas frying just requires an iron pot and a fire.
Precisely. Frying is fast. It seals the dough immediately. And from a historical survival standpoint, frying food in fat imparts incredibly dense calories, which were vital for agrarian societies doing intense manual labor.
Right, you needed the energy.
Yeah. We are endlessly tinkering with the alchemy of dough and heat globally. The choice alters a food's texture, its shelf life, how it is used to scoop up other foods, and its ultimate place in a meal.
Which is reflected in how Wikipedia categorizes Mekitsa. When you look at the metadata, it sits alongside this massive global taxonomy of fried doughs. It's listed right there with sweet variations like Spanish churros, American funnel cakes, and French beignets.
All the classic.
But it's also categorized with savory giants like Indian samosas and Native American fry bread. It just highlights how universal this concept is. We all independently looked at a bowl of wet, sticky flour and decided that dropping it into boiling fat was a universally good idea.
It is perhaps one of our most unifying human traits.
Truly. But understanding where Mekitsa fits into this global caloric family tree brings us back down to earth, to the intimate, personal ways people actually consume it today.
Yeah, back to the breakfast table.
Exactly. Because it's one thing to say it's chemically related to naan, but it's another thing entirely to sit down at a table in Sofia and actually eat it. And its versatility is key to its popularity as a breakfast item.
It acts as a phenomenal delivery system for whatever flavors you have on hand.
Right. You can go the sweet route, which is incredibly popular, dusting it heavily with powdered icing sugar or slathering it with fruit jam or local honey. But you can also take it in a completely savory direction.
Yeah.
A very traditional garnish is Sirene, which is a brined white cheese similar to feta. I can imagine the sensory contrast there is spectacular. You have this piping hot, oily, incredibly soft dough, and you pair it with a cold, sharp, salty, crumbly cheese.
Oh, it's amazing. And the sources even note that it can be eaten alongside more yogurt, doubling down on that tangy, lactic flavor profile that tenderized the dough in the first place.
It's the ultimate customizable breakfast. But it's not just the casual Tuesday morning food, either. In North Macedonia, this simple fried dough takes on a massive, almost sacred cultural weight. We are talking about the newborn tradition.
Yes, this is a fascinating sociological practice.
In North Macedonia, Mekitsa is prepared the week after a baby is born as a celebration to welcome the new life. Now, tradition strictly dictates that this celebration and the physical frying of the dough should take place in the actual house where the baby is going to live.
Right, it's meant to bless the home.
Bless the home, exactly. But the sources note a very specific modern shift. Nowadays, this celebration mostly happens in restaurants.
It's a significant logistical pivot for a long-standing domestic tradition.
And here's where it gets really interesting to me. I initially looked at that shift and thought, are we losing something vital when we outsource traditional home cooking to a commercial banquet hall?
It's a common fear, yeah.
Right. We are taking this intimate domestic tradition meant to bless the baby's physical home with the smells and warmth of cooking, and we are commercializing it.
Yeah.
But then I actually pictured the logistics we just talked about earlier.
The sticky dough.
Yes. We are talking about wrestling highly hydrated, thick glue with oiled hands, managing a massive vat of boiling, spitting oil, and doing that for dozens of neighborhood guests. Trying to do that in a tiny, modern apartment kitchen while a one-week-old baby is sleeping in the next room? I mean, that sounds less like a blessing and more like a severe safety hazard.
It's chaos. And this raises an important point about how traditions actually survive in the modern world. Adaptation is survival. It's easy to mourn the loss of the flour-dusted home kitchen, but the modern world is busy, homes are smaller, families are spread out, and expecting sleep-deprived parents to man a vat of boiling oil is a lot to ask. The venue has changed to accommodate modern convenience and basic safety.
So outsourcing it to a restaurant is actually a preservation mechanism.
Exactly. The home might have been the original symbolic center, but the core symbol is the food itself. They haven't swapped the Mekitsa for a generic store-bought sheet cake, you know?
Sure.
The core human desire to use this specific dish, to literally use softness, to welcome a new, soft, fragile life into the world, remains entirely intact. The restaurant is merely providing a safer, larger vessel for the community to gather around that same ancient symbol.
The symbol outlasts the specific kitchen it was cooked in. That is an incredible journey. I mean, we started with a simple, sticky mix of flour and water, watched it evolve to include yogurt for chemical tenderness, followed it through linguistic naming conventions, traced its global family tree connecting to the tandoors of India, right up to the modern restaurant tables where families welcome their newest members.
Every dish is a document of human history, if you know how to read it.
I love that. But before we let you go, there is one last puzzle hiding in our source material that I want you to chew on.
Oh, lay it on me.
When you look at the Wikipedia data provided in our sources, Mekitsa is categorized heavily into two entirely separate, massive lists at the exact same time. It is listed squarely under donuts, fritters, and sweet-fried doughs.
Which makes logical sense when you observe people eating it covered in powdered sugar and strawberry jam.
Sure. But it is also listed right alongside naan and pita in the massive category of flatbreads. It leaves us with a taxonomic paradox. Where exactly do we draw the line?
Oh, right.
Like, if you eat it with honey, does it become a donut? If you wipe up a savory stew with it, or cover it in white cheese, does it magically transform into a flatbread?
This highlights a much larger issue with how we view food. Why do we even try to categorize these things so rigidly in the first place?
Because we like boxes.
Well, historically, food taxonomy wasn't developed for the consumer or the chef. It was developed for the state.
Wait, really?
Yeah, we categorized agricultural products for taxation, for international trade, for tariffs. Is this item a basic bread staple, subject to price controls to feed the poor, or is it a luxury pastry subject to a luxury tax?
Wow. I never thought about it like that. We assumed food categories exist just to, organize the aisles of a modern grocery store, but it actually stems from trade and taxation.
Exactly. Mekitsa predates our modern obsession with putting everything into strict binary boxes for administrative ease. It operates entirely on its own historical terms. It refuses to be just one thing.
It exists perfectly as this shape-shifting bridge between breakfast, dessert, and bread. And sometimes the most fascinating things happen when those rigid categories just completely break down, and we're left to simply enjoy the messy, delicious, ever-evolving softness of it all. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
It was a pleasure.
And thank you for listening. We'll catch you next time.